What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. We'll continue its conversation with you concerning the complete history of boxing. On the evening of March 1st, 1940, Gilmore Stadium would host an event featuring 30-year-old Henry Armstrong, who steps in the ring weighing 142 pounds, and 33-year-old Seferino Garcia, who steps in the ring weighing 153 pounds. Garcia was recognized as the world middleweight champion. He would take that title October 2nd, 1939 from Fred Apostoli, and he would eventually lose that crown May 23rd, 1940 to Ken Overland. Let's step back and take a look at the bout between Seferino Garcia and Henry Armstrong. What's interesting about this bout, there were a lot of concessions made for this fight. Now, Henry Armstrong would face Seferino Garcia on the evening of November 25th, 1938. Armstrong was defending his welterweight championship title. And it was because of that event that Eddie Meade, the manager of both Henry Armstrong and Barney Ross, a deal would have been made either way for Seferino Garcia's losses between Barney Ross and Henry Armstrong, because he fought them both. He fought them both for the welterweight championship title. So Eddie Meade made an arrangement that either man would get a second shot at Seferino Garcia if he ever won a title. And lo and behold, Seferino Garcia would win the title against Fred Apostoli. But when the arrangement was made, it was made with the intent of Barney Ross being welterweight champion. Unfortunately for Seferino Garcia, Henry Armstrong would defeat Barney Ross in 1938. No one ever suspected that because Henry Armstrong was a featherweight. Well, he would defeat Barney Ross at the Madison Square Garden Bowl. And Henry Armstrong would become a two-weight division at that time world champion. So now Seferino Garcia is the middleweight champion, and he owes Eddie Meade a fight. So since Barney Ross would retire, Henry Armstrong was the welterweight champion. He was the logical contender. The problem with this bout, they really didn't want to face Henry Armstrong because Armstrong would defeat Barney Ross and he would also defeat Seferino Garcia, both in 1938. The mob was behind this bout because Garcia had a guarantee with Ken Overland. So they had to figure out a way to make sure that that fight with Ken Overland would take off. So an arrangement was made for a bout to be held at New York's Madison Square Garden for 10 rounds. Well, the New York SAC wouldn't recognize a 10-round bout in New York. With thought in mind, they figured we'll shift it over to the next possible state that would recognize a 10-round fight for a championship belt. And they would come up with California. Now, part of the puzzle was solved. The second half of that puzzle, we needed to find a way that Seferino Garcia would guarantee not to lose his title. So in comes George Blake, who was a manager of fighters. But the thing with George Blake, he would become the judge, the jury, and the executioner. Because in that contest with Garcia and Armstrong, there were no judges appointed. Only one man can decide the factor in case the bout went the distance. And that was George Blake himself. He was the referee, and he was the judges. Where you can tell this was a bout where the fix was in. The manager, Eddie Mead, never showed up to the bout. He didn't even listen to it on the radio. He stayed home. Poor Armstrong didn't know. He didn't get the memo. He didn't know what was happening. He thought he had a shot at the middleweight championship title. And had he defeated, let's say he knocked out Garcia, he would have only received the NBA. He probably would have never made it out of that locker room. The mob was behind this one. So George Blake would take 5 rounds away from Henry Armstrong at the beginning of the bout. So Armstrong was down on the cards 5 rounds before the fight got started, so to speak. Next 5 rounds, Armstrong will be given the points in the rounds. And at the end of the contest, George Blake would raise Seferino Garcia's hand as still champion because he called the bout a draw. He would fly out of the arena trying to catch a cab because he didn't want any problems with the mob. And he was brought back into the arena, questioned, and he confessed that the mob was behind this one. Because of that, selfish decision by George Blake, Henry Armstrong could have possibly been the 4th black world middleweight champion. He could have had 4 world championship titles on his resume. That didn't happen because he was robbed. Armstrong had a record of 106 wins, 13 losses, 7 draws, and 71 knockouts coming into this contest. Garcia had a record of 114 wins, 25 losses, 12 draws, and 71 knockouts coming into this contest. Unfortunately, that's the way the ball bounces. Garcia will lose his title to Ken Overland. That's the way the mob won it. July 21st, 1941, Ray Robinson would defeat Sammy Angott in 10 rounds in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in Shirley Park. Robinson was 20 years old. He stood 5'11", had a 72-inch reach. He weighed 136.5 pounds. I want you to pay close attention because I went over this several times. Sammy Angott was 26 years old. He stood 5'7.5", had a 70-inch reach, and he stepped on the scales weighing 136.5 pounds, the exact same weight as Ray Robinson. He had a record of 60 wins, 15 losses, 5 draws, and 8 knockouts. Now, Angott would become the champion when he defeated Davey Day, May 3rd, 1940, for the vacant championship belt. Well, Lou Ambers was stripped of his title for not meeting Davey Day. Angott, May 19th, 1941. Lenny Boom Boom Mancini. These were the names during that time. Now, Lenny Mancini was supposed to get a shot at Sammy Angott, but because of the war, he didn't get that opportunity. But Tibby Larkin and Bo Jack would fight for the vacant crown when Angott would retire. Because Bo Jack would defeat Ali Schultz. He would defeat Ali Schultz. And then he would get the shot with Tibby Larkin for the vacant crown. He would stop in 3 rounds, and Bo Jack would become the lightweight champion of the world. November 25th, 1940. Angott would take on Bob Montgomery. And he would defeat Bob Montgomery. March 8th, 1944, he would lose the title to Juan Zarita in 15 rounds. 1945, Ike Williams would defeat Juan Zarita in 2 rounds and become the new NBA lightweight champion of the world. Now, Ray Robinson, June 16th, 1941, would defeat Sammy Angott, defeated him 3 separate occasions. Angott didn't want to put a title up against a Ray Robinson. because he knew he wouldn't keep the title. So after the arrangement that was made between Ray Robinson and himself, Angott was speaking of, he would retire. He retired several times. Because when you retire, you save the ranking process. You don't have to worry about drug testing. You don't have to worry about a lot of things. It's the game that boxing has played in many years. Now, who was Sammy Angott? Salvador P. Angott, who's known as the Clutch. He was born January 16, 1915, died October 22, 1980. He was 65 years of age at the time of his death. He stood 5'7.5", had a 70-inch reach, fought from 1935 to 1950, had a record of 131 total bouts, 94 wins, 29 losses, 22 knockouts, and he was stopped once, I believe, in his career. Could be wrong, but I believe he was stopped once. Now, he fought Davey Day. He would win one and have one draw with Davey Day. Baby Aris Menzi, be in the ring with Fritzy Zivic, who he would lose to. He was in the ring with Willie Pep, and he stopped his 62-0 winning streak, March 19th, 1943. I think I showed you a scrapbook of 1943, 1942 fighters. That article is in there, about 4 different articles of Willie Pep and Sammy Angott. And he would take on Lou Jenkins, who he would defeat. He would fight fighters such as Petey Cerrone and Henry Armstrong, Luther Slugger White. Very good fighter was Sammy Angott. But he didn't want to fight Ray Robinson for the title. No, Robinson wasn't ranked in the lightweight division. But there was an agreement that most people don't know about. Not going to find it in any books. He was supposed to give Ray Robinson a shot. That was an understanding that they had. That's the reason why both men came in weighing 136.5 pounds. You research the rest. July 29th, 1941. Freddie Red Cochrane defeats world welterweight champion Fritzy Zivic in 15 rounds. Contest took place in Newark, New Jersey. It was for the World Welterweight Championship strap. It was at the Old Bear Stadium in Newark, New Jersey, in front of a crowd of 10,000 spectators. Cochrane stood 5'7.5". He weighed 122 to 148 pounds. Had 110 total bouts. Zivic stood 5'10". Weighed 122 to 160 pounds. He had 200 total bouts. Freddie Red Cochrane was born May 6, 1915 in Elizabeth, New Jersey, just 2 blocks down from Mickey Walker. Mickey Walker, in case you don't know, was the welterweight and middleweight champion of the world. He would take his welterweight championship strap from Jack Britton, boxing marvel, and a middleweight championship strap from the Georgia Deegan, Dear to Tiger Flowers. He would die January 1st, 1993, 77 years of age at the time of his death. He suffered of Alzheimer's disease. I met Freddie Red Cochrane. August 26, 1941. Vacant World Light Heavyweight Championship title was won by Gus Lesnievich. When the decision, Bronx, New York's Tammy Mariallo, 15 rounds in New York. September 11th, 1941. Albuquerque Wright knocks out world featherweight champion Joey Archibald in 11 rounds in Washington, D.C. Albuquerque Wright was born February 10th, 1912, California. He died August 12th, 1957 in Los Angeles, California. Stood 5'7.5", weighed 120 to 139 pounds. He had 220 total bouts, 160 wins, and 79 knockouts. September 25th, 1941. Harlem's Ray Robinson defeats Marty Servo in 10 rounds in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Contest took place at the Convention Hall, Ray Robinson was 20 years old. He stood 5 foot 11 inches, weighed 133 to 143 pounds, had a 72.5-inch reach, had a record of 24 wins, 20 knockouts. Servo was 21 years old. He stood 5 foot 7 inches, had a record of 42 wins, 2 draws, and 11 knockouts. September 29th of 1941, the world heavyweight champion, Brown Bomber Joe Louis knocks out Lou Nova. The referee stops the contest in 6 rounds. The contest took place in New York, with Joe Louis' 7th title defense. Joe Louis was such a great fighter, thinker, puncher, knew how to set you up. And when he got you hurt, I don't think any fighter alive has ever survived in a Joe Louis title defense. He was that good. Let's get back to Marty Servo and Ray Robinson for one moment. Marty Servo would lose to Ray Robinson twice. Marty Servo was the cousin of Lou Ambers, the Jicamaya Hurricane. Lou Ambers was a 2-time lightweight champion. And he would face Barney Ross. He would face Henry Armstrong. He would face Lou Jenkins, who would crack his jaw in the 3rd round, stopping him, putting him in the hospital. Lou Ambers was a hell of a fighter. But Marty Servo was supposed to defend his welterweight championship title that he would win from Freddie Red Cochran against Ray Robinson. He didn't want to face Ray Robinson again. He would have his nose broken when he was in a ring with Rocky Graziano. And it was time to face Ray Robinson. He said, I'm retiring. I'm not doing this again, because he lost to him twice. So that's when the title would become vacant in 1946, December 20th of 46 to be exact. Ray Robinson would then take on Youngstown, Ohio's Tommy Bell. November 29th, 1941. Tony Zale from Gary, Indiana, the NBA middleweight champion, becomes the first world undisputed middleweight champion since Stanley Ketchel, when he would take on Georgie Abrams, New York's Madison Square Garden. The NBA and the New York SAC World Middleweight Championship crowns were on the line. The referee was Billy Kavanagh. Now, Georgie Abrams, he was known as Freedom. Born November 11th, 1917 in Virginia. He would die June 30th, 1994, 75 years of age at the time of his death, and he would reside in Washington, D.C. I met Georgie Abrams. Now, let me just say one quick thing about Georgie Abrams. He would draw against Charlie Burley. Let me just tell you about that time. If you look at the Black Murderers Row, I mean, you just look at it for what it is. Georgie Abrams had no business beating Charlie Burley, but he would draw with him. He would face Herbert Lewis Hartwell, Coco Kid. See, this was the problem. And the mob was always behind these bouts. I'll give an example. December 19th, 1941. Sammy Angott would defeat world lightweight champion Lou Jenkins. And he would become once again the lightweight champion of the world. 15-round decision, New York's Madison Square Garden. Angott did not defeat Lou Jenkins. Lou Jenkins had cracked the jaw of Lou Ambers. Now, I'm trying to explain to you how this thing happens here. And it's just unfortunate that the fix is in. They needed Angott. And this is the problem that Ray Robinson had with Angott. Friday night, January 16th, 1942. Ray Robinson would stop Pittsburgh's former world welterweight champion, Fritzy Zivit. 10 rounds. It was the final round of their bout in New York's Madison Square Garden. Referee was Arthur Donovan. He counted 8 as Zivic was staggered. Didn't want him to take any more punishment. He was banging him to the body and to the head, back down to the body. He must have threw about 10 body shots. It was in front of 15,475 spectators. Together they would gross $45,055 for that bout. Zivic was 28 years old. He stood 5 foot 10 inches, weighed 148 pounds, and had a 71-inch reach. Had a record of 113 wins, 27 losses at that time, 7 draws, and 59 knockouts. Ray Robinson was 20 years old. He stood 5 foot 11 inches, weighed 142 pounds, had a record of 26 wins and 20 knockouts. Had a 72.5-inch reach. And that Ray Robinson as a welterweight used to double and triple with left hooks to the body and the head. Sometimes he would double up to the head and come back down to the body. That's not an easy thing to do. Sometimes he would double up to the head, come back down to the hook to the body, and then shoot a straight left jab to the pit of the stomach. Let me tell you what that does. You see Mayweather, these guys are taught very well. Mayweather has been taught very well. Somebody taught him. All that came from Ray Robinson. That's where it came from. At the end of the day, Ray Robinson was a master of closing the distance. But he understood anatomy, he understood pressure points. If you hit a certain area underneath the floating rib, your S1 will collapse. That's the sciatic nerve that goes down to your left leg and it freezes up your foot, goes numb. It happens instantaneously. Then you come back with a jab. You snap the head back and your back will tighten up. Why? Because at that point you have no leg support. Then you step to the side. You shoot what's called the F12 and then the other side of 45 range 12. This basically will finish your opponent. Why? Because the left brain operates the right side of the body and the right brain operates the left side of the body. This is the reason why when I was speaking to you in the last video, straight punches, left, right, left, right, left, right. You don't give the body function an opportunity to recover. Organs will begin to shut down. So when you stab to the pit of the stomach, you break the blood vessels under the heart. Things will start happening to you. You can't breathe. Every time you breathe, you get a cramp in your stomach. You don't even want to breathe. Your legs start to move funny. When you try to throw a punch, you're going to be late because it's hard to lift your arm. All that happens with punches to the pit of the stomach. This is why you see fighters throw the punches like that. You see Mayweather stab to the pit of the stomach. There's a reason why he is doing that. The way you negate that, I'm not even going to tell you. Anyway, let's move on. January 17th, 1942. Muhammad Ali, who was known as the AKA Cassius Clay, was born in Louisville, Kentucky. He would fight Sonny Liston, stopping him in 7 rounds, 1964. He would stop George Foreman in 8 rounds, 1974. And he would defeat Leon Spinks in 15 rounds in 1978. He would be the second fighter as a heavyweight to regain his title after Floyd Patterson would do it. Tim Witherspoon would do it. George Foreman would do it. Evander Holyfield 4 times. Mike Tyson several times. And you have Anthony Joshua who would do it. And if you want to include Larry Holmes, you can include Larry Holmes because he would win the WBC from Norton. And then he would win the IBF when it was first came out. Robert W. Lee was the president. But we'll get to that when we get to the 1980s. You know what? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Thanks for listening. We'll pick it up in the next video. Be well. Peace.